Hello y'all, I'm FastFox90 and I'm here to give you my full in-depth review of Call of Duty WW2 by Sledgehammer Games, as you watch some very mediocre gameplay of it. Now I know it's only in the beta, but I think the only changes that they're going to make are some minor balancing issues, while the core concept of the gameplay is going to stay the same upon its release. But before I go into my review, I want to explain what I believe makes a good Call of Duty /shooting game compared to a bad Call of Duty /shooting game. Within the review, I will be comparing it a lot to Black Ops 3 and Battlefield 1 because I think those are overall great games and ones that I have the most experience playing with. So what do I believe makes a good Call of Duty game? And that is one that is balanced, varied, creative, and rewarding in its class setup, gun setup, map layout, and score streaks with good graphics, animations, and sounds. Thus, the grade of the game will encompass these categories in it. I will also add a miscellaneous category that will encapsulate a variety of random closing thoughts that I believe impacted my overall score of the game. But before I go and give you the specific grades of each category, I want to give you my overall grade, thoughts, and impression I have for World War II. Because I think there is a common problematic theme that I associated with this game. With that being said, I would give the overall score of World War II by Sledgehammer Games a 6.5 out of 10 due to the lack of variety, creativity, and unbalanced nature of the gameplay, and overall average look and sound of the game when compared to other Call of Duty shooting games like Black Ops 3 or Battlefield 1. So let's break down the score according to the categories I mentioned earlier. The first being the gameplay. The gameplay I will give an overall score of 6 out of 10 because of the very unbalanced, unvaried, uncreative, one-dimensional, and repetitive experience I had while playing the beta. Now I know it's the beta and they're going to fix some of the balancing issues, but I still think that there's a lot of major issues that create that very one-dimensional, repetitive gameplay. So let's firstly go into the unbalanced issue with the guns and attachments. The SMGs in the game were way too overpowered compared to the other gun classes. The SMGs were too viable and too useful at all ranges due to their low/manageable recoil, low flinch, and fast time to kill at all ranges. The ARs, LMGs, shotguns, and rifles didn't provide any real advantage or benefit in relation to the SMGs that past COD games or shooters like Battlefield provided. For example, in Black Ops 3, the VMP was a very powerful SMG, but it was incredibly hard to manage the recoil that only really powerful players could control. I couldn't manage the recoil, so I couldn't and never really used the VMP, and instead I used a gun like the Kuda. Both very viable weapons, and both used a lot during the game's tenure. This created a balanced gameplay experience where enemies used a variety of weapons that suited their skill level, their playstyle, and or game strategy. In World War II, it seemed like it didn't matter what map or what game mode. The enemy would use the same SMG class setup and would just rush everywhere. It made the gameplay experience very one-dimensional, repetitive, and thus boring and frustrating because I do not like to play as or against the rushdown style that World War II is. I'm usually a patient kind of guy, and the rushing kind of counters that. The attachments do not really help in ameliorating this problem either because they didn't really seem to add any real value to the guns. The only attachments I saw being used or I would use would either be the grip, quick draw, and extend mags. Attachments like rapid fire, long barrel, high caliber, or FMJ did not add or increase the success of guns or make certain guns more viable than their stock version as much as I wanted them to. For example, the attachments did not make me feel that an AR was more viable or competitive against the SMGs. The ARs would still get outclassed by a stock SMG no matter how many attachments I put on it. This, once again, created that one-dimensional and repetitive gameplay that I experienced so frequently because every game I played, the enemy would use the same SMG class setup. And thus, overall, I would give the guns and attachments a 5 out of 10. The unimaginative maps didn't help the beta experience either. The small, narrow 3-lane map design persuaded players to lean towards a rushdown SMG strategy. There were little opportunities or areas where an AR or LMG or sniper would be more viable than an SMG. Every map had one or barely two floors to play with. This lack of creative map design aided the repetitive one-dimensional feel of the game. In Black Ops 2, maps like Firing Range had plenty of different levels for people to play on. Modern Warfare 2, maps like Afghan and Estate had many routes and open areas toward the domination points that made each play of the same map different. Battlefield 1 is probably the biggest example of this, where every map had multiple floors, large heights to attack from, in both open and enclosed areas where any gun and playstyle is viable on any map. World War II's small enclosed area and lack of options in navigating the maps created the rushdown experience and predictable points of interest where kills with grenade checks were very much abundant, and that happened a lot during my domination experience. Again, I know this is just a beta, and not all the maps were on display, so I just pray that the maps they showed were all their small enclosed maps. And they have other maps where the other gun classes can shine through. But for now, I would give these unimaginative, small, narrow, linear maps a 4 out of 10. Another balancing issue that created the one-dimensional repetitive gameplay experience for me was in the divisions and basic training perks. I absolutely love this idea, and I don't want to make this review so negative because I really found some positives. But I really love this idea, but again, with the overall theme of the game, it was poorly executed, I feel. The divisions and basic training did not create the balanced class setup I think they were trying to go for due to the overpowered division of airborne and infantry and the uselessness of the division classes of armorer and mountaineer division. There was barely any variety in my experience in the games I played. Everyone seemed to either play as infantry or airborne, running around with an SMG. I would usually gravitate towards infantry or airborne myself in the class setups. And you can't blame the players for taking advantage of an obvious balancing issue. Any gun or perk was viable in Black Ops 3, for example, which created a very diverse gameplay experience from game to game. Especially from playing the same map, every map would play differently because players were very diverse in how they created their classes. I mean, honestly, what's more useful, a bipod for an LMG on small maps, or a silencer on powerful SMGs on small maps? I feel they need to retool the perks within the division to make all the divisions seem viable depending on different situations, playstyles, and game modes, no matter how small the maps are. And I didn't get that sense when I was playing the beta. The same could be said about the basic training perks. Again, I love the idea and it has the potential of creating a very well-balanced, varied class setup, but it was too obvious that certain perks were more powerful than others, making certain basic training perks obsolete. Again, a great COD game, I believe, creates the opportunity of having a variety of class setups that cater to a person's playstyle. In Black Ops 3, no 2 out of my 10 classes were the same. Each class setup had its specific purpose according to how the map was being played, because the maps could play one way one game and a completely other way the next game. In Black Ops 3, I saw every variation of perks and gun combination imaginable, and that's what made it really fun and different every time I played it. But in World War II, I saw 1 or 2 variations no matter what the game mode or map was. I mean, who would prefer a rocket launcher over hardline, a silencer over bipod, a third attachment over sniper focus, faster reload over 2 attachments on your secondary? So due to the great potential of their new system but poor execution in the balancing, I will give the division and basic training class setup a 6 out of 10. So let's go into the score streaks, which I think follow the same type of problematic theme that has plagued my overall experience with the gameplay. I believe a good Call of Duty game has a very creative, rewarding, balanced, and game-changing power of score streaks that keep the game refreshing and competitive. Unfortunately, like I've said, World War II had some uninspiring, uncreative, unrewarding, plain old boring kill streaks that didn't give that game-changing vibe that previous Call of Duties, like Black Ops 3, have succeeded in. When I get a score streak, I want to instill fear and worry in the opposing team. When I see a high score streak coming in, I want to feel worried enough to change classes, to take it down and help my team win. I felt neither when playing World War II. There didn't seem any benefit in choosing some of the score streaks either. The mortar strike and artillery strike were pretty much the same, as well as the fighter pilot and glide bomb. They were just way too similar to each other to really feel like I needed to choose one over the other and really see the pros and cons in them. They both seem to provide the same amount of kills per use for the amount of score. It seemed more of a personal preference than a tactical decision. And what's a shame is that World War II could have drawn some sick and great inspiration for score streaks with games already out there like Battlefield 1 with its Zeppelin, Battleship, and train behemoths, but instead went to the generic basic COD score streaks that don't really impact the game in any big way. The score streak seemed more helpful in padding one's own kill to death ratio rather than helping your losing team win. In Black Ops 3, for example, there were plenty of times where strategically timed raps or hardened sentry or wraith or even a hater swayed my losing team into a win, and that's what a score streak should be. There's actually a team strategy in who should use what score streak in Black Ops 3 to optimize your chance of winning when you played with a team. Again, I know it's the beta, but this lack of variety, power, and reward feeling of the current score streaks made them feel forgettable and unimportant towards a win. And that's a shame because I don't think that's what score streaks should be. Because of this lack of power and importance, I experienced a lack of diverse use of score streaks, where I mostly encountered people using only UAVs, fighter pilots, and mortar strikes because they seem the most efficient for their score. Thus, I would give the forgettable score streaks a 4 out of 10 so far. I know it's a beta and we haven't seen them all, but I pray the new ones that get added are as powerful as they should be and as cool and fun and rewarding. The other grade for the gameplay score is basically just my overall subjective fun factor I had when playing. And I would give that experience a 7 out of 10. And that's because I really saw the potential of the game when I created a really out there expeditionary class with duelist basic training perk. There's out there, I didn't really see many people do that, and it actually worked. I used the Carabin sniper rifle as a secondary weapon, and the M30 Luftwaffe drilling as my primary, with bouncing betties and stuns that would replenish because of the expeditionary division class, and I would get incendiary shells for the shotgun. Unfortunately, those types of opportunities of having a creative, rare class setup were very rare and very difficult to make work, but I actually had a lot of great success with my class setup, and it was really fun using because it felt like I was a one-man army that could tackle any situation, and I had loads of fun playing it with putting bouncing betties and throwing Molotov cocktails and always calling in fighter pilots and UAVs. It was so much fun. When I saw that, I really got wide-eyed and I really felt like this game could be great. But unfortunately, like I said, I don't really see that many opportunities for that type of creative fun, and that's why it really hindered the gameplay experience for me. And that's really encapsulates my overall thoughts and impression that this game has. It has loads of potential to be a fun and creative game, but it seemed like it was executed so poorly in all the areas that it turned into a very one-dimensional, repetitive, and generic Call of Duty shooting game because there's so many balancing issues with the maps and the guns that it took away all that creativity. So overall, let's combining all those grades of the guns, the attachments, the map designs, the divisions, the basic training perk class setups, and the score streaks subcategories. I'll combine those all together and give you the final gameplay score of a 6 out of 10. And that's a little low, and it's a little less than average, I would say, for my experience and for my opinion. But I think that's because it's the beta, and they can definitely add and change things, and I know it's going to get higher because I saw the potential, and if they just fix some of the things that I know are probably going to fix, and if they're going to add things that I hope they're going to add, I think it can be a really fun game. So after that, I'm going to talk about the next major category I want to go over, which is the graphics, animation, and sounds. Overall, I would give this category a 7 out of 10 because I believe that a 7 is like an average score, which perfectly describes the graphics, animation, and sounds, which are just average. There's nothing special or incredible, or nothing gave me a feeling of awe when I was playing the beta. It looked good, there's just nothing special, nothing to write home about. It's not like the feeling that I got when I first played Battlefield 1, which I would say is on par in graphics, animation, and sounds as much with World War II. Which isn't really a compliment since Battlefield 1 is a 2-year-old game, and I feel like this game should have better graphics, animation, and sounds. When I played Battlefield 1, I was in awe with the behemoth getting exploded. I didn't really get any of those moments in the beta. And there are even little things that Battlefield 1 does a lot better than World War II. For example, Battlefield 1 does a great job of showing weather effects on guns, with dust and snowflakes hitting the gun and washing away. In World War II, snowflakes would magically avoid your gun on the Ardennes Forest and close. In Battlefield 1, anything and everything that looked climbable was climbable. World War II had a very strict and rigid design in what was climbable and what was not. The guns in World War II all looked, sounded, and animated very well, but it wasn't anything to be impressed by. I don't know how you can make something so impressive since it's World War II and they have a specific design to them, but I mean, it didn't wow me, like I said. One thing I do want to know was that the faces looked pretty bad from what I was seeing. They just looked expressionless and blurry. The clothes, on the other hand, and the hands looked great and very detailed. The foliage, the textures, the colors, and the surfaces of the maps all looked really good. But again, nothing special. I didn't really see any graphic glitches or animation glitches, so that was good to see. The maps looked good, and the surrounding outside maps gave them some life, but I was left wanting more from the map's aesthetics. I felt like more could have been done to make the maps feel like an actual war zone, or I was in the middle of a battlefield. But instead, for me, and a good example was in Gibraltar, it instead felt a little stagnant because you saw those battleships on the water, but they were just sitting there doing nothing. I was hoping for maybe like a sea battle out at sea while I was, shooting people on the ground. That would have been really cool to see. I wish I was wanting more in that area. So on to the sounds. Again, the sounds were good, but there was also some minor hiccups in relation to the animation and the characters. I was confused sometimes to see a motionless body still screaming in agony when I shot them with an incendiary round from my shotgun, for example. I don't know much about biology or the physics behind all that, but I felt like he or she should probably still be like hugging their stomach or wherever I shot them while they were dying, and not be just motionless while screaming. Again, I don't know much about that, and I don't know much about, say, sound in games. I don't know how much I can tell between a great sounding game and a terrible sounding game. So that's why I gave it a 7, because just my overall subjective experience was that it was just it felt average to me from the games I have played, and there was nothing crazy or no sounds left me in awe. And also, whether to retain some sort of war realism, it was very difficult to hear the enemy around you. Footsteps were inaudible and indistinguishable from when you were walking or the enemy was walking on dirt paths or cobblestones. Really, the only distinguishable sound that helped identify where the enemy was coming from were from the untimely callouts from the enemy of my location. Or the adverse effect of when I would be tracking an enemy and my character would yell out his or her location, and then that would ultimately untimely end, more times than not, in my death. And that was probably the only major concern I had, was that type of call out, or like say my teammate that was next to me would call out and they would just scream in my ear that there was an enemy right next to me that was trying to sneak up on. Whereas like say in Battlefield 1 you would actually have a button R1 or L1 or whatever to call out the enemy. And this was kind of automatic, so that kind of made it a little frustrating. But again, nothing too crazy about the sounds. There wasn't anything terrible about the sound, but there's nothing terribly great about it. So that's why I gave this overall average and generic looking and sounding game a 7 out of 10, because it didn't really give me a sense of awe. It just was a good, it looked like a good polished game. But anyways, now on to the final miscellaneous category. Again, this is just some final random thoughts that impacted my overall subjective experience and grade of World War II. And I know that this subjective grade can change upon its final release, and I really do hope so. I think this had, like I said, a lot of potential. and I hope that it gets better. But anyways, the first miscellaneous topic I want to talk about is the connection and matchmaking experience, which I would give an 8.5 out of 10. This was probably the biggest positive I saw coming out of the beta, and really gave me some relief for shooting games, especially in Call of Duty games. Because Black Ops 3, the matchmaking connection experience, I probably give like a 4 because almost every game was lag and terrible. I hated it, and it really ruined the game for me. But this, World War II, had great connection and matchmaking experience, and that's why it gets an 8.5 out of 10, a great score. I rarely had any bad games where lag was affecting the game in such a negative way where it felt like it made me lose games. Not like in Black Ops 3 where it was really affecting the games. Team matchmaking was a little problematic in the beginning of the beta, but I think that's pretty normal, and it actually quickly got better over time. Towards the end of the beta, it was really good, and I don't think I had any game that was bad or laggy. The only real negative I would give would be the aftermatch report, in that it would take a somewhat long time to back out, and thus give you little time in between games to fix and change your classes. But at the same time, this was a very minor issue for me, and didn't bother me as much because I could quickly find a new game, which is really great. Black Ops 3 would take sometimes forever. I know it's an old game, but it still had a lot of issues. And when I was searching for a new game, more often than not, I would always start a game before it started, or at the very beginning of a game where it seemed like it wasn't decidedly over. It was very rare to enter a match where it was decidedly already over. I think maybe one match it was like that. Again, Black Ops 3 was the exact opposite for me, and that actually really ruined the otherwise amazing gameplay and really lowered my overall score of Black Ops 3 because the matchmaking was just so bad. Another thing I also really liked were the very informative kill cams. I've always said that kill cams should display the most amount of information, all the information that you would like, because I love looking at them and gathering information to really adapt my gameplay to how I'm dying. And I liked how it displayed the hit markers and all that. That was really great. It was new. I didn't see that before in Call of Duty games for myself, and I really liked it. Though, I will say, it felt like sometimes it didn't display the information correctly, or not at all. I don't know if there's, like, say, a perk. I didn't see a perk that would say, you don't get to see my perks when I die or something like that. But sometimes I wouldn't be able to see it. And also another one that I liked was the final kill of the match, the round-ending gameplay, where it was actually just the most valuable player doing the sickest score. And I really liked that idea. And I preferred that over a round-ending kill cam because it could just be a terrible player getting a cheap kill. So I really like how they switched it up, and it really helps highlight the MVPs of the match. The other topic, though, that I want to talk about are the two game modes that I played the most during the beta, which were the new one, War Mode, and Domination. War Mode was a great addition and really fun to play. It has a lot of potential of being a game mode that adds longevity to the game because it hones deeply on the communication and team strategy aspects of what makes a Call of Duty game great. It could be the new search and destroy / hardpoint game mode in the competitive scene. / esports scenes. My only concern, though, is the fact that it has to be played on separate maps designed only for War Mode. And it's not playable on just the regular maps present, say like Point 2 Hawk or Ardent Forest. I think it can definitely limit the replayability of the mode if there's only one map to play on upon release. I don't know how many there are, I don't know if there's information out there saying how many maps there will be for War Mode, but my question would be, what would be an appropriate map count for just one game mode, especially upon release? Is it just that one, or is there going to have as many maps as the basic game mode maps? Will additional maps be available through DLC? That's another question I have. And through the different maps, will there be different objectives to complete? I know in the War Mode there were the building the bridge, blowing up the area, bringing your tank over, taking over that house. So will that map only have those objectives and another map be, say, a different objective? I think that would be really cool to do, and I hope they do that, because I think that would really add to the replayability and longevity of that game mode. But with these unanswered questions, for now, I would give the new game mode an 8 out of 10 because it was great, I loved it, and I hope they really expand it to its greatest potential. The other game mode experience I've played was Domination, and I would give that a 7 out of 10. And that's because I played Domination the most in Call of Duty games. I have the most fun with it. I think it's, the most strategic, team-based mode, and I like kind of the idea that I can get a lot of kills and wins. And it's the most fun I play within a game. And a 7 out of 10 is a little disappointing for me. I wish it was higher, but it was mostly because of the small map design and rushing strategy that plagued the beta. And I felt that due to the small map design and linear 3-lane system, it was way too easy to knock people off of B. Especially when you just respawn at your respective domination point. There was a lot of times where I would just die at B because I was capping it or trying to get someone off, and then respawn at, say, A or C on a map, and then still be able to kill that guy. That happened a lot. And it was because of those 3-lane systems, it was also very predictable to understand where enemies would come from when you were capturing points. And, both good and bad, because it made it easier to capture certain points, but also a bad thing when you try to defend the same point. So in other games like Black Ops 3 or, say, Battlefield or Modern Warfare, it was very difficult, and it was very team-based strategy. I felt like I could one-cap a lot in this game, and I feel like that can be a little problematic and not very team-centric. Another important aspect of Domination that was positive were the spawn points. They were really good, but I think that was mostly just due to the huge, large back areas of the maps, and that just helped. And that was good, but also, those were like the only areas that actually were open and big that I wish that the actual maps themselves would actually play like. But, good thing that there was no feeling of being spawn trapped or being pinned down. I didn't really feel like that, and I think that's a great positive, because sometimes in Black Ops 3 I know that could easily happen, especially on, say, like Nuketown. That would really be annoying and frustrating. The domination points are also in good locations, but at the same time, I feel some of them, not all of them, need to have a larger capture point. I felt like kind of like feeling around to where like the edge of the capture point was, because it was just so small and I wanted to have a good location. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong and they chose those sizes for strategic reasons. I also wish, and I've always made this complaint, that there was actually some progress to capture indication on the HUD instead of just a flashing icon. So like when say an enemy is capturing your 8 point and it's just flashing, I kind of wish that it would show how much there was left for the point to be captured, because I think that adds some strategic sense. So like if it's already about to be captured, you don't want to run over there, maybe you want to go to another point, for example. So I think that would add a layer of strategy, and I've always made that complaint. I feel like they never do it. So I hope they make that change. But that's a little minor. I don't really mind that much as much. It's a minor grievance. So again, Domination 7 out of 10, War Mode 8 out of 10. So overall, that's pretty much it. I'm just going to summarize my review of World War II. And basically that summarization is, it is an unbalanced, unimaginative, unrewarding, and unvaried gameplay that is combined with an average set of graphics, animations, and sounds. And that created a very lackluster game experience for me. The new additions of War Mode, its creative new way of making classes, and good matchmaking experience cannot save this game from being a generic COD game with generic score sheets. It did not prove to me that it should be classified as one of the top shooting games for the current generation of game systems, or the top Call of Duty game of today. This game, though, had some great ideas, and that's what I really want to hark on, is that it had some great idea and it has the potential for being a really, really fun and diverse game. Because I know I've been very negative, but I really want to send the message that it has some great potential for it being that fun. But all of that is hidden, just buried amongst all the obviously balancing issue it has in the divisions, guns, and map designs. The game has some hits, but way too many misses to rekindle that forgotten COD magic that gamers have been longing for in the series to return to. That is why, overall, I will give Call of Duty World War II a 6.5 out of 10. So that's it for me, y'all. Thank you all for watching my video and listening to my review. I know this is a very subjective review, and I think any reviews should be subjective because everyone has their own differences, opinions on what makes a good Call of Duty /shooting game. So please share your own respective /subjective review thoughts and impressions of the beta. Please, please, please comment with respect and niceness, of course, on what you agree or disagree with me in regards to anything you heard today. And finally, please, please, please comment on what changes, additions, or subtractions you would like Sledgehammer to make. Well, that's it for me, y'all. I'm FastFox90, and thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great day, y'all. Bye.